I would like to talk about the differences between homeschooling and unschooling, also known as no schooling. Now, for thousands, probably even tens or even hundreds of thousands of years, we've been no schooling or unschooling our children for the longest time because schools really didn't exist back then. Schools were basically everyone teaching everyone else, and the younger children learning from the wise older adults. And most likely, back in those times, we were more wise and we were living more in harmony with nature and the existing world, as well as the free roaming animals in nature. And today we have this messed up society because of our, well, because of a few things, but basically because of consuming animals and seeing non-human animals as property. Basically, it's called the herding culture, as well as being kind of dominated or ruled by governments and the monetary system, as well as mega corporations. So we've been teaching children and teaching ourselves and learning from experience and through our intuition and by going out to nature and so forth. And now we are sitting mainly behind desks, listening to teachers, whatever they've been indoctrinated to, whatever they've been indoctrinated, they teach. And we have to give them the right answers. Otherwise, we're given all sorts of medications and all sorts of diagnoses by the doctors and so forth. And so homeschooling is basically the same thing. We're given the same criteria that our society provides to our children in public schools or even in Catholic schools. And we realize that it's basically the same history, the same materials that everyone else uses. And it's given by or governed by governments, and thus it's the same, basically the same teaching. It's indoctrination. It's things that they want us to learn, and though of course homeschooling is better because of the fact that we can stay home and we can teach our children anytime, and we can even go out and we can do our own teaching and stuff like that. Go to nature, take nature walks, and teach children about so many different subjects. And there's, this it's much better definitely than the institutionalized educational systems that we're taught. Just go to school. We're not here to teach you anything. We're working so hard and so many jobs and long hours that we don't even have time to spend with you. You go to babysitters or to some kind of after school program, and the parents hardly ever see their kids. They just tuck them into bed and that's it. And even the nanny sometimes does that. So parents sometimes don't even see their children, even for weeks or months. And especially the father, if the father is overseas working somewhere else, to provide money to the family. So even if you're in school and even homeschooled, sometimes you have a teacher that homeschools you, or maybe it is the parents, but then they have to find some kind of work online or some kind of business to be able to do that. So it's very difficult in this world, especially in this society that we're living in, um, with the coronavirus now happening and all that kind of stuff. It's very difficult to make ends meet for most people. So it's very difficult to even homeschool nowadays, unless now, of course, because um, many people are not working, it's still very difficult. Now, the, the difference between homeschooling and unschooling is is that it is the same thing. Is just the information that's presented is different. So homeschooling basically is given the same materials or similar materials as in basic institutionalized educational systems, also known as public schools or Catholic schools, as it's called in Canada. And it's basically the same thing. It's just you're doing it at home and you're teaching it at home from your computer, from the internet. So that's basically all it is. It's the same thing, homeschooling and regular educational, whatever it's called, the educational system is basically the same thing. If you go to school, an actual physical school, or you stay at home and learn, it's basically the same thing. Now, unschooling is really not indoctrinating our children with any of this external information. So, what kind of information, what kind of studies, and what kind of curriculum do we get from unschooling? Now, unfortunately, unschooling or no schooling is not accredited, so it's not added to any kind of official documentation stating that you passed grade whatever. It's basically a system that's anarchist and nonconformist in the ways of thinking and doing. So basically, if you want to get a job, an actual job in society, unschooling and no schooling is definitely not for you because you're not going to be accredited. You're not going to have any official government, uh, you know, um, what they call it, like some kind of school report or school, uh, exams and things like that. You're not going to have any of that stuff. You're not going to have any kind of schooling reports. So you're not going to have any grades or anything. You're not going to know if you passed a grade or not. So basically, non schooling or no schooling or unschooling is where we just learn from living, basically. That's the basic definition. Learn from living, learn from being in the world. So there's different ways of learning. We learn from each other. So not only do parents and families and people in the community, elders, teach children, but we can they can learn from children themselves. And basically, there's no formal structure. So kids just learn on their own. They learn throughout the community. They learn by experience. They learn by using their intuition. They learn by meditation. They learn, let's say, writing and arithmetic. In a kind of a kind of a classroom setting, but more informal. So maybe just sitting down on the ground or sitting in chairs or things like that. Um, so really nothing formal, okay? Nothing like an actual classroom setting with desks and things like that. So going out to nature, learning, about different plants and different animals, what's edible, what's not edible, learning how to cook, learning how to prepare foods, learning what foods are edible, what foods are not, and not being indoctrinated by the system, by the government hierarchical system where corporations rule and governments, you got to obey the governments and all that kind of stuff. So basically it's a non-conformist and non-conformist and anarchist way of living. And so of course with unschooling you definitely do not get any kind of certificate or any kind of report cards or any kind of degree, or you can possibly get a job in society, but only the lowest paying jobs, of course, unless you're some kind of genius and people find out that you're a genius, you can probably go for any kind of job in that case. But if you don't have any kind of paper that certifies you as you passed, you know, you finished high school and you got a degree of some sort in a college or university, then most likely you're not going to get, a good paying job in society. But for the people that are um, doing unschooling or doing no schooling, which is again basically the same thing, um, that's not people's aim in the communities. People's aim in the community is to be as self-sustainable as possible, to learn from experience in each other and nature, and to disregard anything that society has to offer. Just bypass society completely and to realize that, hey, I've been living in nature for a very long time, maybe even since birth, and I learned from experience from this way of living. And to also understand that all creatures, big or small, starting with humans, um, I mean, with humans, with non human animals, and with nature. So, respecting all life, basically. Respecting, caring for all life, not harming as much as we possibly can, not using other beings, and that sort of thing. So, that is what unschooling is all about. And I didn't realize this until maybe a year ago, less than a year ago, that there was such a thing as unschooling. I thought no, I thought homeschooling was the alternative, and that homeschooling is the best thing. And it's actually not, because it's actually one and the same. Homeschooling and the regular educational system that we have in society, it's basically this one and the same thing. One and the same thing. Now, if you're homeschooling, maybe there's, people take it less serious than if you're actually enrolled in an actual school and you go physically there. Unless, of course, we're in times like this in in the world where we can't physically go to schools because they're just all closed, and so we need to do homeschooling. But that's the thing, is that it's basically one of the same. Homeschooling is just nonsense, in my opinion, and we need to teach kids unschooling, teach kids to not. And also, another thing I just want to mention, that if you do have kids, to not have it in a hospital, do not have any sort of um, ID or licenses or passports created. Create none of that stuff. Now, if you absolutely need to travel somewhere around the world, it's unfortunately going to be hard to do that because we don't have passports, and every border is protected by society, protected by, governments and police, border police personnel, and it's very hard to bypass that when you don't have any documents at all stating who you are. I mean, you know who you are because you're in your skin, right? You're born as who you are, but to prove, you can't prove anything. I mean, I don't even see having a silly government document proves anything, in my opinion. you know, but that's what it is to them. That's what they need, and unfortunately, you can't go over the borders and to do whatever you need to do in another country. I mean, if you're in a cold country, um, like Canada or Northern Europe or things like that, you know, unfortunately, you're there. You gotta make the best of it. If you, you know, I mean, it's really hard because we live in a society which really indoctrinates us and forces us to comply with their silly laws. And it's unfortunate that we just don't have the freedom to do what we want when we want and to go where we want. I mean, it says that we do, but we really don't. They confuse us. The government confuses us. They say one thing, but they mean another thing. It's really hard to be a complete anarchist and nonconformist in this world. But if you are, do your best. Do not register your kids in a hospital or do not give birth in a hospital. Give birth at home and do it yourself because it's so simple. Just have somebody else there with you, guiding you or helping you. And that's about it. I mean, you don't need any of that crap. I mean, I wish I totally denounced everything that I owned government wise, my passport, birth certificates, um, licenses, driver's license, um, bank cards, all that stuff. I wish I got rid of it a long time ago. Unfortunately, I wasn't born, completely free. I was born in a hospital, so I got to do the best that I can. And eventually, when I get to a place that I really want to live in and learn the language very, very well, then maybe then I can denounce all of my governmental papers that I just really don't need any longer, and then completely become free of the society and tell people like, no, I'm not part of society. That's it. You can't force me to do anything. I'm a sovereign individual human being with the right, with a fair share and the right to land, clean water, seed, and plant foods. That's what um, it's all about, baby. So, thank you for joining me. Give this video podcast a thumbs up. Share it around with all your friends and family that will find it useful. And don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube channel and the email newsletter. And do get my books, the newest ones, and all. My website is down below. And if you want to donate a little bit so I can continue doing these videos, then please do so. One-time donation or monthly would be very appreciated. Even $1 a month would be really, really appreciated. I thank you so much for supporting me, helping me to continue my work, and for you, for your beautiful smile and your beautiful natural beauty, and for you sharing the message to the world, because we need the truth coming out, and we need the veganism to be spread and to shared around the world to everyone. And that's about it. Thank you for joining me. I love you all. Bye bye.